I'm Farhan Dalla, transformational trainer, and welcome to Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast, an invitation to take the journey towards your deepest self. It is my intention to inspire you to connect, move, and meditate. We'll tap in, tune in, and dive in, and together learn and reflect from authentic, real, and transformative conversations. Let's get started. Disclaimer: the information in this episode is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have a medical condition, please consult a medical practitioner. Hi, everyone. Today, my guest is Mark Ruegg. Mark is a healing advocate who shares an integrative whole person approach to recovery centered on belief, mindset, and nervous system regulation. After being diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic neuroendocrine carcinoma and given a limited prognosis, Mark pursued a path that combined conventional medical treatment with meditation, lifestyle changes, emotional regulation, and deep spiritual belief. He has more than 20 years of experience working closely with children and families as a professional child wrangler in the entertainment industry in Hollywood. Through this work, Mark learned how to take complex situations and break them down into clear, approachable ideas. That skill now carries into how he explains the principles behind his own healing journey. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I hear that introduction. I'm like, wow, I want to meet this guy.
Well, so do I, and so do my listeners. I mean, I learned about you through Dr. Joe's testimonial page. And as soon as I heard your testimonial, I was like, I got to have this guy on the show. I really wanted to talk to you. Thankfully, you were available and you said yes. I imagine life's changed and it's become busy for other reasons right now, but all for good things and good reasons. You beat the worst type of cancer anyone could ever have, and that is stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and described as neuroendocrine carcinoma, which I believe is one of the worser kinds. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's very rare. And there's actually two different kinds of neuroendocrine. There's a neuroendocrine tumor, which they call a NET, a PNET for pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, or a PNEC, a PNEC. And it's very interesting because a lot of people get them very confused. And a PNET, a neuroendocrine tumor, is actually slower growing. Usually when you get told you have pancreatic cancer and they say neuroendocrine, you're like, oh my gosh, I got the good kind. But then there's even one that's worse than that, and it's called a neuroendocrine carcinoma. It's very rare. It's less than 1%. And it's a grade 3. It's high grade. It's very aggressive. Typically when they have a neuroendocrine, they do this, a Ki-67 test, and it basically tests for how fast those cells are multiplying in your body. And just to give you an example, like a neuroendocrine tumor would be possibly around a 10% growth rate and have a Ki-67. Mine was greater than 90%. So
Wow.
it was they were multiplying pretty fast. That tumor was growing, and yeah, my first oncologist basically gave me 4 to 6 months.
And this is now 2 years later. Is that correct?
And we are over 2 years later, and we're going strong. We're feeling good. I feel healthier now than I ever felt in my entire life, and I'm sure we'll discuss a lot of that.
Well, first of all, let me start by saying I'm so happy for you. Like, I cannot express that enough. I'm excited to dive in and share your story with listeners, how you healed. So before we do that, let's begin the conversation around what was life like before or prior to the diagnosis. How were you living? What was life like?
Got it. Yeah, and I mean, I was living pretty well. I was a dancer. I always say I was a dancer in another life. I did that for a long time. I met my wife that way, and we traveled the world. I was a repertory dancer for a while. I worked with a company out of Chicago. I came out to Los Angeles. I did commercials and industrials, and then kind of ended my career. My wife and I were on a cruise ship. So we got to travel the world performing and singing and dancing, and it was wonderful. And I was getting a little older and getting a little more injured. So I had to come up with something new. And I live in Los Angeles. So becoming a production assistant on set was kind of a easy thing to do. There was a lot of productions back in the day. It's not so much anymore. But so I was PAing on sets, basically getting people's coffee and setting up the craft service table and figuring out what I was going to do with my life next. And I was doing a job for Disney, for the Disney catalog, and they were working with children. I'm actually the youngest of 10 kids, and I have 21 nieces and nephews. I have 40 some great nieces and nephews. So I had a little knowledge about kids and children, and everybody used to, all my brothers and sisters would tell my nieces and nephews, just go play with Uncle Mark. So I had no idea. I must have been training for this career that I had no idea even existed. But so there was a kid on set. I'm a production assistant. He's very shy. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to get his picture taken. And but he seemed to like me, and I asked if they wanted a little bit of help. And so they said yes, and I helped them get on set, and we got the pictures, and they were happy with him. And he said, he's coming back tomorrow. Can you do the same thing? And I said, yeah. I said, sure. So I did that, and eventually they made me their official child wrangler. And I didn't know what it was, but basically it's just keeping the kids entertained on set, keeping their attention span. And I did it for about a year for Disney, and over the course of times, 20 years later, I've been able to lock in a lot of different clients. So not only Disney, but Target and Zara and Old Navy. And basically, if they sell children's products, they're coming to me as a child wrangler. And yeah, it's been a great journey. And then my wife and I created a little wrangling agency. So we have about 10 others that work under us, and I kind of taught them the ways of how to do it and let them on their way, and it's been nice.
That's amazing. And so, what eventually led to the diagnosis?
So, it was a trip that we were taking with my wife, and we were coming back from this trip from in Lake Havasu, and the music is playing, we're holding hands, we're singing songs, and we're talking about retirement. All of this stuff that I talked about was working. Everything was in play. We had money saved. We had clients booked. Like everything was good. And so we're singing and we're so excited about our future. And literally a week later, I'm in the emergency room because I had this nagging pain in my right side that just wouldn't go away. Um, so I'm in the hospital. They do some tests. They actually do a CT scan, but it wasn't with dye, and they didn't see the tumor at first. They kind of misdiagnosed me. They diagnosed me with pancreatitis at first. So I had to go into the hospital, no food, no drink for like 5 days. Um, and I was already losing a lot of weight, so that was very, very scary. But on the CT scan, they did find a very large kidney stone, and that became the shiny object. That must have been why I'm having all this pain, even though the kidney stone was on the opposite side, but that's what they focused on. So
So, hold on
in
a
the
sec. You have
yeah,
pain
yeah,
on the right side, you have a kidney stone on the left side,
correct,
and they're thinking this is what's causing your symptoms. So now the treatment focuses on the kidney stone.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
All right.
So and that, I mean, it takes some time to find a doctor, schedule the surgery and what. So in the course of this about a month is going by, and I'm still in a lot of pain. I'm still losing large amounts of weight. I probably went from about 175 pounds down to 130
Wow.
in a matter of a couple months. And we end up doing the surgery. We get rid of this kidney stone, but the pain is still there. I'm still losing weight. I I just don't know what's going on. So I find a GI. He schedules an MRI, this time with dye, and that's when they found it. It was it was a 4 centimeter tumor in the head of my pancreas.
Well, I'm glad that you continue to pursue for the right diagnosis, or we would not be having this conversation right now. But there must
Pretty
have
tr-
been something within you, an inner voice, guidance that said, this doesn't feel right. I need to keep pursuing this.
Yeah, no, totally. And like I said, I think the scariest part was that weight loss. When you look in the mirror and you're seeing not only the weight going, but your muscle mass is going. There's just you knew something was wrong. And I was eating a lot, um, because I thought, I don't know, but it was kinda going straight through me. And, what I found out later is just my pancreas was not producing the right enzymes, so I just wasn't digesting any of my food. It was pretty much going through me.
Well, you were eventually introduced to Dr. Joe's work. Um, I just want to briefly mention to those who don't know, Dr. Joe Dispenza is a chiropractor, author, and a lecturer. He's known for his work on mind body healing, neuroscience, and personal transformation, blending quantum physics with ancient wisdom to teach people how to change their reality through meditation and changing beliefs, stemming from his own recovery from a spinal injury. Dr. Joe has retreats where he teaches this material, and I'll leave the link in the notes where you can learn more about him. But from my understanding, when I saw your testimonial, he had a huge influence on your healing journey. Could you talk about how you got introduced to his work and
Yeah.
how that journey began that led you to your healing?
So I get diagnosed. They find the tumor in my pancreas. My first oncologist explains to me that I'm stage 4. It was in my lymph nodes. It was in my liver. He did not give me a good prognosis. Pretty much 4 to 6 months. Told me to get my affairs in order, and we fired him. And we found a specialist. And after further looking in, they realized that I was a neuroendocrine carcinoma, which was a very rare uh, pancreatic tumor. Um, I was explaining a little earlier that gets misdiagnosed a lot of times for pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, which is a PNET, which is actually pretty slow growing. And if you get a pancreatic cancer diagnosis, you kind of are relieved when you get this neuroendocrine tumor. But mine was even more rare. It was a pancreatic neuroendocrine carcinoma. They call it a PNEC, NEC, and that is grade 3. It's very aggressive, and, it's multiplying pretty fast. So I found a specialist that was kinda specific in that neuroendocrine world, and he put me on a regimen of this chemo cocktail, which was 2 different chemos, a carboplatin and an etoposide, along with, Tecentriq, which was an immunotherapy. Um but with the immunotherapy, they tested all my markers, and they told me that even though I wasn't testing positive for this protein, this PDL1 protein, which they were gonna targeted, my doctor just wanted to try it anyways. So he's given me this chemo cocktail with this immunotherapy, but he's telling me that the best they can probably do is shrink it a little bit to help give me some relief, but getting rid of it and curing it was just not possible. They told me I was incurable. They
Mm.
said I was terminal and I was inoperable. And at this time you're flooded with just so much information. You
Right.
just don't even know where to turn, and they're telling me I have to do chemo, and I'm like, "Okay," and they rush it really fast. and they're really good at that fear technique,
Right.
and but you don't know much, I don't know much, so I say, "Okay, if this is how I have to live, then I do that." So I go on and I do my first round of chemo, and I'm at home on my couch, and by this time, word is out, it is spread, I'm getting inundated with tons of emails, and I'm just sitting on my couch reading them. And a good friend of mine who had cancer, sent me the documentary Heal, and in that documentary, there was so many people. There was Dr. Joe Dispenza, Anita Morjani, and I'm watching these people talk about healing, and everybody on my Western side, even my doctors, my support groups were telling me that healing was impossible, that curing was there was no way, and that and I just remember how sick I felt talking to the Western side world, because they were surviving, but nobody was thriving. And everybody was going from one chemo drug to the next to trying this trial and then having this side effects. And they were in and out of the hospital all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, this is my life. There has to be a better way. And when I was watching that documentary, I'm hearing people talk about healing, curing, and doing all sorts of things. And I remember telling my wife, if I only got 6 months to live, let's dive in further over here. And by diving in, I went to Dr. Joe Dispenza's website. And on Dr. Joe Dispenza's website is this thing called Stories of Transformation. And
Mhm.
he just has so many people up on stage and talking about their healing experiences. And I remember telling my wife, that's going to be me one day. I'm going to be on his stage and I'm going to be able to share my testimony. And that became the target. That became my thing. I was going to heal. I was going to get better. And I feel like I'm just babbling and babbling and going
No, you're
on,
not, you're not. Keep going. I'm loving this. No,
but
please keep talking about it. Yeah, because I think the critical point here is your decision to choose another way, and that there actually is another way. And some people don't even know that there are other options. And when you hear what you heard, if you chose to believe in that death sentence, like I said, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I'm glad that something within you clicked, and you decided to not only try the other path, but that you declared that you would be on that stage and sharing your story, and that you did. So please continue. And that's how I
yeah,
discovered you, right? Like when I
it's
watched your video, I was like, oh my God, I've heard of a lot of healing journeys, but pancreatic cancer is the first one. And I've met many people at his retreats who were told they had inoperable cancers who are very much alive today. So, yeah, please carry on. So, you hear about Dr. Joe, you go to his website, you decide you're going to um, be on that stage one day. And what did you do to get there?
yeah, I was going to heal. And so I just we dove in. This was going to be it. This was going to be like the catalyst that was going to change everything. And so I'm Googling on his site, and I'm looking at stories of transformation, and I'm trying to decipher, okay, who who are doing what meditations for cancer. So I was finding all that, and one of the ones that came up was this meditation that he has called Blessings of the Energy Centers.
Okay.
And so
Were you a meditator before, or
I was not a meditator
you were not
before.
a meditator? Okay.
I was not into this, what I call my quote unquote woo woo world.
Right.
But I'm hook, line, and sinker now. But
Okay.
I just went on. They said these meditations were helping him. I'm like, well, let me try. And so I downloaded his Blessings of the Energy Centers, the one, and it came with a little instructional video or a instruction guide, and so I listened to that, and then we just started, my wife and I together, and we made a commitment. We were gonna do these meditations, and we were doing it an hour in the morning, first thing we got up, and an hour before we went to bed. And we just did it. And it was pretty simple. You just had to like get rid of all your other thoughts, focus in on those energy centers.
Mhm.
And, you know, we did it for about a month straight. And about a month in, this crazy thing started to happen.
Okay,
I
before you
st
say
Yeah.
that, let me ask you this. Okay, you are still in the midst of chemo treatment at this point,
Mhm.
and you're losing weight. So physically, like, how is your energy level, and how were there any challenges to sit through and do this meditation? Because I think I want people to understand it doesn't matter what state you're in, what your physical capacity is, that you can do this, and you're living proof of that. So could you maybe describe for all of us, like, how are you feeling physically? And despite that, how you managed to get through and do the meditations twice per day?
So, when you have chemo, they give you a steroid. That first couple days that you're right after your chemo, you feel pretty good, and you almost feel like you can take on the world. And then day 3 hits, and it's bam, and you're down for the count. And that lasts for about 3 to 5 days. And you can't do a lot of anything, much of anything, but I could meditate. And I always wanted to stay proactive. I wasn't always going to once I dove into this world that we can heal ourselves, I wanted to be proactive. And we did lot of different things. I was walking a lot. I changed my diet, and we can talk about a lot of those as well. But for the meditation, it did not take a lot of physical energy. I could sit on my couch and I could focus in on what Dr. Joe wanted me to focus in on. So I'm like, let's do what I can do.
Mhm.
And as long as I was able to focus and do the meditation, it wasn't that physical. I was like, ooh, I can do this. And so that's what we were doing. And that's why it became not simple, but a regiment. Because, before I even got to the place that I'm going to tell you about, those meditations were so calming. It I tell everybody, meditation, it gets you into the present moment. It gets you out of the shoulda, woulda, couldas of the past and the what ifs and and maybes of the future. And when you get into that present moment, that's where healing actually occurs. When you can focus your brain and start calming that central nervous system, start turning down that sympathetic nervous system that gets cranked up when you're in fight and flight. I mean, what I've learned now, I didn't know then, but what I know now is our bodies physically cannot heal in fight and flight. The
100%.
It's biologically turned off, those mechanisms. And what sucks is that doctors a lot of times, not meaning to, but they keep you in fight and flight. They tell you things like you only have 4 and 5 and 6 months to live. And you're on guard. You're in survival mode. And doctors are really good at keeping you alive. But it takes our own bodies, our own selves to get us to heal.
Mhm.
And that's what I started to feel like now in hindsight, what I was setting the map for. I was putting my body in alignment so that healing could occur.
Amazing. And you were saying in about a month of doing this, something
In about a
amazing happened.
month of doing this, I started to feel this energy. Something was happening inside my body. The more I released, the more I vibrated. And in the beginning, it was insane. I like to tell everybody that it was like a fish out of water. I was flipping and flopping. It was insane. And I didn't know what was going on. It didn't hurt. It didn't scare me. So I just allowed it to happen. And I remember that first time it happened, my wife's next to me and we come out of the meditation and she just looks at me and she's like, "What was that?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." I'm like, "That was insane." I didn't know if I was releasing energy, if I was bringing energy into my body, but something clearly was going on. And then we went to bed that night And about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up with what I describe as an explosion out of my spine. It hurt. It was loud. It popped. It woke me up. I screamed. My wife woke up. She's like, "What's going on?" I said, "Something just exploded out my spine." She's looking at me like I'm crazy. She's like, "Mark, you're dreaming." I said, "If I'm dreaming, this is the most realistic dream I have ever had in my entire life." I saw the brightest lights. I always describe it as those old Batman and Robin TV shows where they went bam and
Right.
kapow. And this is what I'm seeing. And we're awake, we're talking about this. And after a few little while decompressing, understanding what was going on, we just went to bed. And I was already scheduled for a PET scan about 2 weeks later. Um, and I did that PET scan, and I'm telling you, there was no tumor in my pancreas. It was gone.
Wow.
Jeez.
It it was crazy. And, the medical profession, the doctors, it's hard to believe that. So even though it wasn't showing up on my PET scan, they still believe that it was there. They still believe that even if it wasn't lighting up, it had to be at the cellular level. And so my treatment continued. I stayed on there, but I had this saying, and I would tell it to anybody who would listen, and I said, I know I'm already healed. I go, I'm healed. I'm just now waiting for my doctors and my scans to catch up and tell me what I already know. And that became my thing. And the more I did it, and now I cannot meditate without vibrating. There is something in me, and I feel there's a connection there. There's a connection there to source, to God, to consciousness, whatever you wanna call it. But I know, and it's like my North Star. It's my guiding light. And I'll tell you, it doesn't just happen when I meditate now. I can be driving down the road and I start vibrating, and it's leading me, it's telling me something. And I always tell people, I go, because I have a lot of skeptics in my world, and they may not wanna believe God, source, this quantum field, but they understand their own consciousness. And I said, "It's that thing that keeps you out of traffic. It's that thing that pulls you back from standing too close on the cliff." There's an inner knowing of what's good for us and what's bad for us. And when you tap into that, it will guide you. It has guided me this whole way. And the only way we get there is through stillness and quiet. And that's what I thought Dr. Joe's meditations was able to achieve for me, to quiet the noise, to calm the static, to get quiet enough to be guided and led. And that's what can say I'm doing today. I've released it all. I surrendered. And I wake up every morning now and I just pick up my breadcrumb. And I'm like, where are we going today?
You said on an Instagram post recently, and I love this. I need you to hear this. The most dangerous moment isn't the diagnosis, it's the moment belief begins to fade. Because healing doesn't start in denial, and it doesn't start by pretending everything is fine. Healing begins with belief, the quiet decision to trust that your body is still capable of repair. If you're wondering whether it's too late for you, it isn't. Healing is possible. I love this. Do you want to talk a bit about this? Like
Yeah.
Dr. Joe mentions that there are three key words to changing our reality. That is belief, behave, become. And just hearing what you've just said describes all of that. But I love this post here that you talk about in terms of the belief. Do you want to elaborate a little about this post and its inspiration?
Yeah. And, and we talked a little bit about this, but since this journey has begun, I always explain that healing is possible. I try to share that as much as possible. Healing is possible, and it starts with a belief that you can. It's the first ingredient. I'm working on my healing recipe. It consists of these 7 ingredients. It's belief, meditation, spirituality, decreased stress, increased positivity, diet, and exercise. But belief, it's the dough. It's the thing that holds all of these together. Because if you are making a pizza and you don't have dough, you just have a bunch of vegetables on a cutting board. But it's the dough that actually makes these things stick together. It's the dough that puts it and makes it a real pizza. And so this is where it all begins. And I hear people and I get so mad again at these doctors who give this prognosis of you got 4 to 6 months because so many people, they don't have the belief. They don't understand that healing is possible. And that prognosis a lot of times becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
But belief, once you have it, it is powerful. And I didn't have my own belief in the beginning. They said it wasn't possible. So you end up having to borrow someone else's. And I think that's what those stories of transformation did for me. Hearing other people talk about their healing journey. Because if it was possible for them, then it becomes possible for me. And just now if I can become somebody's 4-minute mile, if they can hear this program and they too go, well, man, if it can happen to Mark, it can happen to me, then let's do it. And I say yes, because that's where that seed of belief gets planted. And then you need to water it, you need to fertilize it. And one of the things that I think helped me was my mantra. I had this mantra that I just said over and over again. I still do. I say it about 100 times a day, and it is, I am strong, I am powerful, I am healthy, I am healed. And the more I said it, the more I thought it, the more I started to believe it. And the more I believed it, the more I was able to become it.
It's amazing. I think, belief means to believe that healing is possible. But I also think that belief implies that you're worthy of receiving that healing,
Yes, totally.
right? Did you ever contemplate your worthiness or have struggled with that? As I'm sure some people that are listening to that, that may be a potential block. Like, am I worthy of receiving this healing?
No, totally, and I think a lot of times it was so funny, my one brother had this saying, anytime I would start to doubt that this healing was possible or that healing was actually happening, because it comes in. Doubt is crazy, and, he would say, "The devil's in the doubt. You gotta get the doubt out." And that was my kind of another little mantra I had, and doubt makes you feel unworthy. Doubt makes you go, "Well, why me? Who am I to heal? Who am I to break the odds?" You go on Google, which I do not suggest, and you start looking for the ratios of the people that are surviving this thing, and it's so minuscule, and it starts just to feed all this negativity into your head. And, you know, worthiness happens through positivity. And the more positivity you start to include into your world, the more that you start believing that healing is possible, then you can start to feel worthy. You start to understand that love is actually the greatest gift that we've all been given, and we don't accept it. We don't accept it in ourselves. We don't give it freely. And love is so freaking powerful. It is the one of the greatest things. In fact, I tell people this all the time. You can't hate and heal at the same time. You wanna heal, you gotta get rid of the hate. I don't know what you're hating, somebody else, something that happened 10 years ago, 10 minutes ago. You don't have to forget it, but you have to forgive it, and you gotta move on, and you gotta forgive yourself, because so many times you start looking at where you're at in your world and you start going through the path of well, what if I change this? And what if I did that? And you got to forget it. Who cares? You know exactly. I have these mantras and I say them all the time. But another one is I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at precisely the right. And you look back now 2 years ago, cancer was the worst thing that ever could have happened to me. 2 years later, me talking to you on this program, it's the greatest gift I've ever been given. I chose to love my cancer to death. Everybody, when I got sick, everybody's like, F cancer. We're going to fight it. We're going to battle it. And I had to calm them. I'm like, that's not my approach. I wasn't going to fight it. I was going to understand it. I was going to figure out why it came. And then I was going to love it enough to let it go.
That's beautiful. You talked about your recipe, and I went through my own healing journey. And if those of you haven't heard, in episode 1 of the season, I healed my scoliosis, and I had my own sort of guidelines that I followed. And much like yours, the first thing was not to give my power to the diagnosis, that the power stayed within me, that I was going to choose the life that I was going to live, and not allow the practitioners to tell me what the future held in terms of living a life of chronic pain. I can relate to the meditation and physical exercise that you talked about. I'd like to dive into some of the recipe now. You mentioned the belief, the meditation, physical activity, changing your diet. Let's explore physical activity. How did that play a part in your healing?
Yeah, my cancer was in my lymph nodes. And always heard about lymph, but I had no idea what it was. I didn't know, like, what did it do? And now that I understand it, lymph is so important, and it travels through our body, and it's our natural detox system. And the problem with lymph, though, if you don't move, it's not moving. Our blood has our heart to pump it through our body. Our lymph does not. So we have to move it. We have to physically get up and move. We have to breathe deeply. And there's a thing I do called a rebounder. And there's something about just bouncing and the gravity, and it just helps that lymph move through our body, and it goes through and it goes into our lymph nodes. And those lymph nodes are where our immune cells are, and it kind of gets rid of all the bad, and then the good goes through. And especially, I tell everybody, especially if you're on chemo, I know all you want to do is sit on that couch, but you got to move. You got to get up, just even if it's walking around the house or whatnot. So I did that. And a good friend of mine is a yoga instructor, and yoga became very, very a big part of my healing journey as well. I couldn't go to the gym. I wasn't able to lift a lot of weights, but I could I could do poses. I could get my body to go where it needed to go. And so moving the body, becoming physically active, it's so important, not only for our physicality, but for our mental state as well. Because the more I sat on that couch, the more I would get, you could find yourself going down this spiral, and you would start and you could see yourself getting a little depressed. But, exercise, there's so many benefits to it. The hormones that go through your body, the serotonin, the oxytocin. I mean, these are positive hormones that makes your body feel good. So the more I exercised, the more I started to feel good. And the more I felt good, the more I wanted to feel good. So those things kind of motivated me to do more. And then I'll kind of go into this. So I started, once I could feel a little better, I wanted to walk. And the goal was 10,000 steps. And I started to get my 10,000 steps a day in. And I live in Marina Del Rey, so it's kind of nice out here. I went over to the marina, could walk around the boats. And, I started to realize that I was walking on purpose, not only for steps, but there became this ritual that I started to do. And I now call it my steps with God. but you can call it conscious or whatnot. But, I walked in 4 parts. And when I started walking in the day, it was all about gratitude. How much was I grateful that I was alive? And I knew no matter how bad I had it, there were people that had it way worse than me. And so I just walked in gratitude. I just would walk and list all the different things that I was grateful for. And then I knew that so many people were praying for me. I was feeling better. I knew I was a walking testimony of answered prayer. So I started to pay it forward, and I would walk in prayer, and I would just pray for my family, for my friends, for everyone that I knew that was sick, for my state, my town, my country, everything. And then it went into meditation. I tell everybody, praying is talking to God, meditation is listening to him. And I started to just get quiet. I would walk in the present moment. I would focus in on the trees, on the birds, on the boats, and just get present and calm that mind that was just racing. And as I was walking, and I would just slow it down and just stay in the present moment and appreciate God's beauty. And then, the fourth part, I would put in my headphones, and I would just crank up some good music, and I would walk in celebration. I would dance home. I just felt good. And that became my daily practice. It was 10,000 steps. It was the exercise, but it became my walk with God. And I still do that today.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned your diet. How did you change your diet?
So diet I think is so important. I've now spoken to so many cancer people. I mean, it's just crazy. Everybody's calling me, and they have a son or a daughter or themselves or a husband or a wife. And, one of the, I think, biggest demographics that are suffering right now are 20 and 30-year-olds with colon cancer. It's pretty rampant. I'm talking to 3 different parents right now who have children on the age of 26, all suffering with colon cancer. And I think food is a big part of that. I think stress is on top of that. But if you go back and you look at just in the ingredients in typical foods, and back when I was the day, if you looked at like a box of Cheerios, it was like a little bit of ingredients. Now it's like so big. There's so many chemicals in there. There's things in there that you can't pronounce. I tell people, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't probably be eating it or digesting it. So, the big thing, I followed this Chris Beats Cancer protocol. He has a square one protocol. Um, Lots of different modalities
This
in
is someone
there.
that had beat colon cancer, I believe, right? And
Correct,
now
correct.
he has
Chris
a
Sport,
website.
and,
Yeah.
he has a website, and, he has this square one, and I just kinda downloaded it, and I followed it, and it includes a lot of juicing. I was juicing vegetables, basically 32 to 64 ounces of vegetable juice a day. Um, it was a combo of carrots, celery, cucumber. I'd put in some lemon, turmeric, ginger, and garlic. I remember my friends would always, come over and they'd wanna taste it. I'm like, "Okay, but it's not for beginners." But juicing was so important because it got in the nutrients so quickly. So, a lot of times your appetite, especially through the chemo, you're not wanting to eat a lot of things. You're not wanting to digest a lot of things, but juicing, it was an easy way for me to do that. And then I was eating a ton of salads. I'm from Ohio originally. I was a meat eater. I loved having my cocktail after work, and I stopped drinking alcohol, stopped eating meat, went to a whole food plant-based diet. And now in hindsight, I'm not as against meat or no meat, but there's 2 major things if you're gonna try to heal that you need in your diet. You need to stop the ultra processed foods. Those things are killing us. There's so many toxins in those things. So if we can eliminate those ultra processed foods, and then you start to understand, cancer loves sugar. It in fact, I would always explain to people, they're like, "Nah, that's a wise tale." I'm like, Do you understand how a PET scan works? I mean, a PET scan basically you fast, so you're starving your cells for an amount of time, and then you go to the hospital. They shoot you up full of this radioactive glucose, which is basically radioactive sugar. They know that cancer cells are more aggressive than normal cells. And so the cancer cells goes and gobbles up all this sugar. They take pictures and they're like, yes, this is where you have cancer. So the hospitals know that cancer feeds on sugar. Yet one of the first things they give you in the hospital is this protein shake with like 32 grams of added sugar.
Right. Or
It's
Jello
insane.
or something
Or
like that.
Jello or ice
Right.
cream. And they want you to feel good because they don't know how long you're gonna be around, but they're in the job of survival. They're not in the job of healing. And it's not against them, they're just a lot of them don't even understand. And you know what? There's something about having that ownership of our own bodies, not depending on your doctor gonna be the one that heals you. We have to heal. We have to figure out, we have to do the things. We have to take the steps. We have to do the meditation. We have to change our diets. We have to believe. This isn't on anybody else. It's not our doctor's job. Yes, they're a tool. Just like all of these things are the tool, but we're our own chefs in our own kitchen using these ingredients in the best way that we can possibly.
You mentioned the walks that you referred to as walks with God. Were you a religious person before this, or were you spiritual, or how has
You,
your healing changed
you
your
know, I
view
was
and
uh I,
process?
I was born the youngest of 10 kids. My mom was Mormon, my dad was Catholic, hence I think all the children. My mom eventually converted to Catholicism, and I grew up in a Catholic church. Um, and it was good. I had nothing against it. I kind of stepped away more from organized religion and became more spiritual. Um, but I think I was slowly getting away from it. And, to be honest, I think there was a nudge, there was a whisper, there was a poke in my back that, "Hey, maybe you should come back. Maybe you should maybe there's some things I need to teach you and you're not listening." And unfortunately, I think the universe whispers, taps, nudges, and if we don't listen, bam, we get hit against a brick wall, and that's what I think my cancer was. I think my cancer was this wake-up call
Mhm.
that I had to change. And I always tell everybody, I don't think cancer is this automatic death sentence. I think it's a message that we have to change, that we have to shift, that we have to do something a little different. And that's what cancer was to me. And so it allowed me to change my eating habits. It changed my thought processes. It changed my negativity to positivity. But if I have to think about one of the greatest things that it ever did, it brought back my spirit. And meditation allowed me to do that. And I think consciousness, God, is lives right here. It's right here in our heart. And a lot of times we can't get to them because of the static, because of the noise, because of the distractions. And I talk about this healing bubble. I was very, very fortunate that my wife and we had this company. It was doing well. I was able to go into what I called my healing bubble. So I was able to get rid of all these distractions. The greatest thing my wife and I ever did was turn off the news. We have not listened to the news since September of 23. And, all that noise coming in, it just keeps it keeps like Dr. Joe says, it creates this incoherent brain and everything's firing in all different places. But when I got quiet, when I found coherence, when I got so soft, I was able to connect with what I call God, but you can call it consciousness, you can call it the all knowing, you can call it universe. But my connection with spirit now, with that thing that lives in me, it is so strong, and it's my guidepost, it's my North Star, and it's it keeps allowing me to do what I think I have to do, and, you did a Dr. Joe retreat. You know that he does, like, this 5-hour meditation,
Yes,
and it
I know it well.
it's crazy, and I love how he doesn't really tell too many people about it, because I think our minds would start going, "Oh, we can't do it." But during that 5-hour meditation, something very strong came onto me, and it hit me very hard, and it was this this thing that said, "The strength is in the surrender."
Mhm.
And I didn't understand quite what it meant, but since then, I've used it a lot, and I think that's exactly what I've done now. I've 100% surrendered. And there's strength in that. And we talk about surrendering, and a lot of times we think of it as giving up and giving in. But no, it's it's surrendering to the fact that there's something greater. It's surrendering to the fact that we don't always have to be in control, that we can let go of the wheel. And when we trust, there's strength in that. And that's just where I'm at. I just have fully surrendered, and, I just keep trusting that where I'm supposed to be is exactly where it's supposed to be, and I just live on that.
And I hope people that are listening to this who are contemplating going to a Dr. Joe retreat are now thinking, "I'm not gonna be able to do this
Sorry.
5-hour meditation." No, it's fine, and I'll tell you from my experience, when those 5 hours were over, I had no idea that it was 5 hours. I had no idea. We'd started at I didn't it was 4 in the morning, we finished at 9, we looked at our watches, we're like, "What?" Like, I know. It just goes by, and when you're in, as you described, the present moment, you're not in the future, you're not in the past, you're not looking at your watch like, "How much longer do I have to sit here?" There is so much strength in power in being in the present moment, and as you described, and getting still, and allowing your senses to be open to receive information. And in order for that to happen, you got to get quiet and still. And I got to say, Mark, I have this theory, and you can chime in if you like, that all disease is a form of separation consciousness.
Mm.
And the healing process is about remembering who we are, letting go of who we are not, and just coming into the alignment of the truth who we already are. There's no becoming in that process. It's remembering. And in order for us to do that, sometimes it does take a crisis. Sometimes it does take an illness. It's not my preferred method of choice. And but like you said, and this is probably the greatest gift that you've ever received. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's hard to see the light when there's more light. It's hard to see a flashlight in the sunshine. And not that I'm saying that the only way you can find this inner peace is through heartache, despair, and the darkness, but there's something about when you get into that dark space that this light shines through. And if you acknowledge it and you follow it, it'll take you where you've never even could have imagined going. And what I think now, and this gets a little too in depth, go to a Dr. Joe retreat. He'll explain it way more better than me. But I believe that time isn't like a vertical or a horizontal line. It's up and down. Everything is happening at the exact same time. And I had to take a moment when I got on that stage for Dr. Joe, because, when I started to watch those stories of transformation, and when I told my wife that I was going to one day be on that stage, I don't know if it was something that I manifested or something that had already happened. And it was my future self telling my sick self that I was going to be okay. And I talk about that mantra that I am strong, I am powerful, I am healthy, I am healed. I don't know if that was me telling myself to be better or if it was my future self reminding me that I was already those things.
Amazing. And just to rewind a little bit, when you had the CAT scan, or whatever scan it was that they didn't see the tumor, you still, from what I understand, had to go through another surgical procedure where they went in to see, and then the doctor discovered that the cancer
Oh,
was
oh yeah.
there.
So
Yeah, do
I
you
think
wanna talk a bit about that? Because it's gonna
yeah,
lead me to
so
my next question, and I want people to know this part of the story because it's amazing.
so um so the tumor was pressing up against my bile duct. And so they had to put in a stent inside my bile duct. And at first it was a metal one. And my body rejected it. I ended up in the hospital, 104-degree fever, and it was just crazy. So they had to replace it with a plastic one. The problem with a plastic one is that they had to change it every 3 months. So I now have a plastic one in. I'm going in to have it removed or exchanged. And my PET scan was good. I think I even before then they gave me another CT scan, and that was showing no cancer in my body. There was no evidence of disease. And so we're going in to exchange this bile stent. And I told the doctor, I said, "Hey, what are the odds of you just taking this out and leaving it out?" And he's like, "Mark, I'm sorry. It's just that's not protocol." He's like, the odds, even though it's not showing up on the scans, the odds that that are there are pretty high." And he goes, "I'm sure it's at a minuscule level or at the cellular level. And if we take it out and it starts to grow, you're going to have more complications." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "But I'll tell you what I'm going to do." He goes, "I'm going to go in. I got to go in anyways." He goes, "I'll look around. I'm sure I can find it and I'll measure it. And then when you come to, we can talk about it." And I said, "Fine." So he puts me under and I come to, and this guy is the head of this department at Cedars in Los Angeles. My entire oncology team says they work at Cedars because of this man. So he's seen it all. He's been through a lot. And this man is jumping around like a kid in a candy store. And he is pointing at me and he's telling everyone, he's like, it's a miracle. This guy is a miracle. He's like, "I have never seen a tumor disappear from the pancreas in my life. It was gone. He
Mhm.
took the bile stent out and it has never been back."
Amazing.
Crazy.
Right. So, Mark, you finally get the confirmation, which you already knew. What's the first thing that you do to celebrate, or what do you do, like, when you get the news? Like, how did you acknowledge this amazing news? You're a miracle, you're healed. What's the first thing that you do?
So, and it's so funny. You hear all the news, you have all the gut feelings, you know it, you have the doubt still creeps in. That freaking devil of doubt
That devil.
that devil of doubt will
Ah,
creep in. So there's this constant fight. There's always a battle,
mm,
but it's all about now just trusting, because the more I trust, the more I give in. Everything is just it's all about that trust. And there was something that happened, and you can't see it right now. Maybe I'll turn the camera around. But when I got sick, so many of the kids that I worked with in the industry, their parents were reaching out, and they kept calling my wife, and they wanted to know what they could do for me. And she was like, "If you could just draw a picture, write some words of encouragement, and send it to them in the mail." And they did. And my mailbox was getting full, and there were so many cards and pictures. And we decided we were going to put them up on this one wall, and I was going to have this positivity wall. And I'm telling you, though, they just kept coming. they kept coming, and so it went from the wall to the dining room to the kitchen, up the staircase, and its entire house is now filled with these pictures. And my positivity wall became a positivity house. And every morning that I wake up and every night I go to bed, I'm looking at it. And there's energy in these pictures. There's energies in these words. And this is what I live on. And this is what motivates me. And so you ask me how would I do to celebrate? I celebrate in life. And if I can now pass on this positive energy, if I can pass on this hope, this encouragement, if I can be this 4-minute mile for somebody somewhere, that's how I'm celebrating. And ever since that Dr. Joe aired that episode, that me on his stage,
Yeah.
I've been inundated. We are talking to so many people,
Right.
and cancer is just running rampant, and people just need some words of encouragement. But Farhan, I want to be more than just inspirational. It has to become practical. It has to be something that people can do so that they can achieve the same results. And I don't guarantee anything, but like I said before, we have to become self-empowered. We have to take this disease on for ourselves as well. We can't just put it all out there in hopes. And I remember talking, I love sharing this joke, and I'm sure you've heard it, but I tell it all the time. And I'm like, I don't think God just healed me. It wasn't like this miraculous thing and like, boof, you're healed. I think it was the path that he took me on. And there's that joke that where the guy is drowning, the flood's coming, and he's on his roof, and the neighbor comes by and he throws him the life preserver, and he's like, grab a hold, and he's like, no, I'm fine. God's gonna save me. And then the water keeps coming up, and he comes by on the boat, and he goes, jump in, come on. He's like, no, I'm good. God's gonna save me. And a helicopter comes after the water, and he won't get in. And finally, the water over his head, he drowns. He goes to heaven. He's like, God, what happened? I thought you were going to save me. And he's like, dude, I threw you a life preserver, a boat, and a helicopter. What more do you want?
Mhm.
And that's what I feel God has done for me. He's shown me a path. And that's what my healing recipe is all about, those 7 ingredients. And if I can share that with people, if they can make that a practice, do these things on the daily, you are going to put your body back into homeostasis, back into balance. And that is the only place that true healing can really occur.
I love that. And did we cover all 7 of the ingredients? I just want to make
I
sure.
think so. So
We
it's
did.
basically it is my
Summarize.
belief, it's meditation, spirituality, it's decreased stress, getting rid of, turning off the noise, going into your own healing bubble. Positivity, that was the positivity wall, increased positivity. We turned off the news and we replaced it with comedies. We didn't even watch anything that was shoot 'em up or suspenseful. It was all, if it didn't make us laugh, we weren't watching it. We went through the entire like comedy section in Netflix. And that was what we wanted to do. We laughed. It's good for our psyche. It's good for our brain. It's good for our soul. And then diet and exercise. If you do these things, and you don't have to be sick to start applying them. I do this thing called function health medicine. It's Dr. Mark Hyman. He's out of the Cleveland Clinic. And I tell people that I was reactive once, but never again. It's all about being proactive. So I do these tests, and I'm checking my biomarkers, and there's like 110 of them. And it's crazy. By doing all these things, not only are my scans clean, but my blood work is all in the green. I feel healthier now than I have ever felt in my entire life. So I know it works. It works for me. I just keep doing it, and I keep sharing the news and spreading the message.
Excellent. So, Mark, will we be seeing a book from you one day?
My most definitely, I'm working on my book, The Healing Recipe. I'm working on my TED Talk. I'm working on so many my keynote. My goal is to spread this word, to share it as much and as loudly as possible. I'll tell you one more thing. We went so that documentary Heal. It was so life changing for me. I don't think I would have known about Dr. Joe Dispenza or any of these people without that documentary. And so that's Kelly Noonan Gores. She had this kind of event, and it was here in LA. And she had this amazing panel of women up there, all had their most incredible healing stories. And they were sharing it, and it was so powerful. And it was on Zoom, so I'm sure there was a lot of people watching. But I turned around in the audience, and there was just not a lot of people there. And I remember leaving, and I looked at my wife and I said, "It's time to get loud. It's time to get loud because not enough people know that there's another way. They don't understand that this is possible." And I have nothing against Western medicine. I think it's did its job. I think it stabilized the tumor long enough for me to add all these other modalities for them to go to work. I think holistic is great, but it takes time. It takes time if you're changing your diet, if you're changing, like, time is important. So I think a combo was perfect for me. Um, but yes, I want to get loud and share that these are some things that you can start to add to your lifestyle
Right.
that are going to just make you not only feel good on the outside and on the brain, but your blood is going to be good. You're going to have proof. So I love that.
I'm not sure if I asked you this, but what was the timeline between the diagnosis and the healing confirmation? Was that just a matter of a
It
month?
was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I got diagnosed November 6th. It's my wife's birthday. I know it well. Um, we started my first treatment in December. I started meditating early January. And I think February, I might have had one other round of chemo. But remember, they said that the best case scenario is we can shrink it a little to give you some ease the pain, but there's no possible way we can get rid of this thing. And then February was the PET scan. And that's when it showed no evidence of disease, no tumor in my pancreas, and then multiple CTs and MRIs from them. And every single one has been the exact same result.
Amazing. Amazing. Mark, I love this idea about getting loud, and I am so grateful that I could, in some way, use this platform and this podcast to share your message. I think it's so important. The one thing that I want to say is you're the third person I've had on this show that has had, a healing journey with cancer. And the common thread between all of you that really stands out is your level of happiness. That is so evident. Um, Everyone said that they were so happy that by the time they got, that confirmation, they already felt happiness. They already felt like they were healed. They already knew, which means that our body has the wisdom and the knowing. I don't feel like we've been put on this planet and been told, you're on your own until it's over and I'll see you when you're back without the tools and the resources. And I think that if we were to embody that belief system, we're implying that in some way we've been put here and abandoned to figure it out. And I think through some of the tools that you've talked about and with my other guests, that we have the capacity to tune in and tap into that wisdom and whatever that looks like for you, whatever pathway you choose, but the information is there for you, for everyone, and everyone is worthy of receiving it, and everyone has the possibility to heal if you choose to believe.
Yeah, and I wanna end on this because you talked about happiness, and I have some friends, and I was a pretty happy person anyways, but I think I was able to carry that into my cancer journey, my healing journey, but I'll have some friends, and they're like, "Ah, Mark, why you get all these things, of course, and because I talk about happiness, and they're like, of course you're happy. Look at all these great things that you've gotten in your life. You have a good job, you have a good wife, you have a good relationship, blah, blah, blah. And then I look at them and I say, but am I happy because I have those things? Or do I have those things because I'm happy? And I truly believe it's the latter.
I agree wholeheartedly. Mark, you have a beautiful spirit. I am so happy for you. I am so happy that you're healthy. I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation. I know anyone who's listening to this will be inspired in some way. I want to leave you, my friend, with this. May you always continue to be happy. May you always continue to be healthy and thrive in health and in all areas of your life. May you always be surrounded by love. And may you always, always experience joy in your life. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate this opportunity, and just thank you.
I'm Farhan Dalla. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's episode of Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast. I hope today's conversation has elevated you in some way and inspired you to connect, move, and meditate. I'd really appreciate your support by following and rating this podcast. Come back soon and join me for another transformative conversation.